New York City, Monday, 7:58 a.m. Ava stood in front of the towering glass building of Wilder and Co., clutching her lukewarm coffee like it was a shield. Her reflection on the mirrored facade stared back at her tailored navy suit, a neat low bun, subtle makeup, and just enough perfume to suggest she hadn't been crying in her car 10 minutes ago. She inhaled deeply, squared her shoulders, and stepped inside. The lobby buzzed with the sound of expensive shoes on polished marble. Hurried. Greetings and the occasional ding of the elevator. Ava offered a polite smile to the security guard, nodded at two interns who barely noticed her, and headed to the elevators with the practiced precision of someone who'd perfected the art of invisibility. By 8:01 a.m. She was at her desk. Her inbox had already exploded. 43 unread emails, several of them marked urgent and all stamped with one name, Darren Kern. Mr. Kern, her boss. Her nightmare. Ava had been working under him for 3 years, each day a quiet war of endurance. Darren was the kind of man who wore $900 shoes, made $500,000 a year, and wielded his authority like a weapon. He didn't scream or curse, that would have been too obvious. No, his tactics were surgical, subtle belittling, veiled threats, impossible deadlines, and an uncanny ability to make her feel like a failure, no matter how hard she tried. At 8:06 a.m., her phone buzzed. A calendar invite from Darren, 8:15, my office. Don't be late. She didn't even have time to sip her coffee. Darren's office sat like a throne room at the end of a hall, glass walls, custom desk, shelves lined with fake accolades and overpriced bourbon. Ava stepped inside and closed the door gently. Behind her, Darren didn't look up. He continued scrolling on his phone, legs crossed, suit flawless, 3 minutes early. You're learning, he said dryly. Good morning, Mr. Kern. He finally looked at her. Morning. Did you read the Trans-Pacific report? I did. I made some notes. You made notes. I asked you to rewrite the executive summary, not doodle in the margins. Her stomach tightened. I thought, asterisk, that's the problem. You think too much. And not enough. Ava blinked. I'll fix it. You'll rewrite it from scratch by noon. And Ava, yes? He smiled thinly. Don't embarrass me again. Back at her desk, Ava stared blankly at the monitor. Her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't sure if it was rage, fear, or fatigue. Probably all three. She opened a blank Word doc and started typing. Again, around her, the office buzzed. Laughter from the marketing team. Someone's birthday cake in the lounge. Ava sat still, fading into her chair like wallpaper. She had dreams once. She remembered them vaguely, like old songs heard in passing. A nonprofit, maybe teaching, something that mattered. But after her parents died and student loans began to strangle her, she took the first corporate job she could get. And now here. She was 28, living in a 500-square-foot studio, spending nights crying into takeout containers and days surviving a man who thrived on her. Humiliation. But today felt different. There was something under the shame. A flicker. A heat. Something was waking up. 10:22 a.m. VA's fingers moved across the keyboard in a robotic blur. Words were forming. Sentences were taking shape, but her mind was somewhere else. She was on her third rewrite of the Trans-Pacific. Executive summary, and every version felt like a shot in the dark, trying to guess what Darren considered visionary this week. A Slack ping interrupted her. Jessica, HR. Got a sec? Ava exhaled and typed back, sure. She stood up, smoothed her blazer, and walked toward human resources. Jessica's office always smelled like those expensive candles from Instagram ads. Something vaguely minty and sweet. She offered Ava a seat and closed the door behind her. Doing okay? Jessica asked, getting right to the point. Ava gave the reflexive nod. Yeah, just a hectic morning. Jessica closed the file in front of her, folding her hands. 3 different people have seen you crying at your desk in the last week. Ava, you've worked past 9 p.m. 4 times and haven't used a single vacation day this year. Ava dropped her gaze. I'm fine, really. Jessica tilted her head slightly. How's it going with Darren? There it was, the question Ava had been dreading. It's hard, she said after a pause. Most days I feel like I'm constantly failing, even when I meet deadlines, even when I stay late. He just finds new ways to make me feel small. Jessica nodded, and Ava could tell she meant well, but also that her hands were tied. HR could only do so much when the toxicity came from above. Do you want to file a formal complaint? Jessica asked gently. Ava shook her head almost immediately. No, please, I can handle it. At 11:47 a.m., Ava finally finished the report. She saved it, converted it to PDF, and hit send with trembling fingers. The subject line was simple. Revised. Executive summary, Trans-Pacific. She didn't wait for her reply. She grabbed her mug and made her way to the break room. The coffee machine hissed quietly as she filled her cup. You know, came a voice from behind her. If I were you, I would have quit months ago. Ava turned. It was Lucas, one of the analysts. One of the few genuinely decent people in the office. I can't, she said softly. Why not? Because I don't have another option, Lucas nodded. But as he left, he paused in the doorway. One day you will, just remember that. That night, Ava stayed late again. The office emptied out, leaving her alone with the hum of printers and the flicker of dying fluorescent lights. She packed her bag, rode the elevator down, and stepped into the cold city air. She didn't play music on the subway ride home, just sat, staring at her reflection in the glass. A tired face, lifeless eyes, but something was shifting. Beneath the exhaustion, beneath the humiliation, there was a spark, a pulse. Something was waking up. Tuesday, 6:41 a.m. the next morning. Ava woke before her alarm. Not because she was rested, she wasn't, but because her mind had already started racing the moment her eyes opened. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling of her tiny studio apartment. The paint was cracked near the vent. She'd always meant to fix it, but never did. Like so many things in her life, it had just become part of the background. But something felt different today. The same dread was still there, pressing against her chest like a heavy book. But beneath it, a tiny voice had returned. Not loud, not brave, but firm. You can't keep doing this. She got up, showered, dressed, and made her usual stop at the bodega for coffee. As the familiar bell chimed when she opened the door, Mr. Salim, behind the counter, looked up and smiled. Morning, Ava. Early again. Always, she said, managing a small smile. One day I'll be late on purpose. You? Never. He chuckled. She sipped her coffee on the walk to the subway, the wind stinging her face. Her phone buzzed twice, new emails. Of course. She didn't check by 8:03 a.m. She was at her desk. Darren's door was already closed. That meant he was in, and probably watching from the small security camera feed he kept to monitor productivity. No one talked about it, but everyone knew. Ava logged in, opened her inbox, and immediately saw it. Revised executive summary. Better, still not great. That was all. No grading. No signature. Just those 4 words. She closed the email. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. Instead, she opened a new tab. LinkedIn. She hadn't touched her profile in nearly a year, but today she clicked edit, updated her headline, tweaked her experience, rewrote her bio. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, just that she needed to look. For the first time in months, Ava searched Project manager jobs, NYC, remote friendly. Her finger hovered over the apply button. She didn't click it. Not yet. But she didn't close the tab either. At lunch, she sat in the cafeteria with her usual silent salad. No one joined her, as usual. She was the kind of employee people respected in theory, but avoided in practice. Being close to Darren Kern's target wasn't safe. People were polite, distant. No one wanted to be next stop, but today, someone approached Lucas. He sat across from her, holding a chicken wrap. "Hey," he said casually. "Mind if I join you?" Ava blinked. "Sure, of course." For a moment, they just ate. It was weird. But nice. Then Lucas leaned in a little. "Can I ask you something?" "Go for it." "Why are you still here?" Ava froze. She stared at him, then down at her salad. "I don't know," she admitted. "Maybe I'm scared. Maybe I think this is all I'm worth." Lucas nodded. He didn't say something cheesy. Didn't launch into a pep talk. He just said, "That's bullshit." Ava let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. And for the first time in a long time, she laughed. Just a little, but it felt real. Wednesday, 9:12 a.m. day. Next morning began like all the others. Cold commute, tight-lipped nods in the elevator, and that familiar sinking feeling as Ava slid into her chair. But something was different. She didn't quite notice it at first. It wasn't obvious, like a lightning strike. It was quieter, like the slow trickle of water through a crack in a dam. By mid-morning, Darren called her in again. Same glass-walled office. Same smug look. He didn't even greet her this time. "Where are the slides for Friday's pitch?" he snapped. Ava blinked. "I didn't receive the final assets from the creative team yet. That's not my problem." "Ava, your name's on the deliverable. If it's late, it's on you." She paused. For once, she didn't rush to apologize. "That's not entirely fair," she said. Darren slowly turned his head, as if surprised she spoke back. "Excuse me?" I said, "It's not fair. I can't control what another department hasn't delivered. And I flagged that yesterday, in writing." Ava's heart pounded in her chest, loud and wild. For a moment, Darren just stared. The room felt frozen. Then he smiled. That sharp, condescending grin. "Noted. Now figure it out." She nodded once, then turned and walked out. Back at her desk, her fingers were shaking slightly, but she didn't feel regret. She felt alive. Lucas pinned her on Slack a few minutes later. "Lucas, you okay?" "Ava, actually, yeah, I think I am." That afternoon, something else shifted. Ava got a response from one of the jobs she had bookmarked. On LinkedIn, a small agency, remote friendly, a real team, based on collaboration and mutual respect, at least. That's what their Glassdoor page said. She stared at the reply. "We'd love to schedule a first interview." She didn't smile. Not yet. But something unfurled in her chest. Hope. Not the daydream kind. The real kind. The kind you can build things on. Ava didn't quit that day, or the day after, but she walked differently. Spoke differently. She started saying no when she used to say sure. She stopped apologizing for things that weren't her fault. She smiled less, but meant it more when she did. It wasn't revenge. Not yet, but it was the beginning of power. Thursday, 10:37 p.m. The hallway outside Ava's apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the radiator. She slipped off her heels, dropped her bag by the door, and walked straight to the kitchen. Dinner was a half-eaten sandwich from the office fridge and 2 Advils. She didn't even sit down. Instead, she leaned against the counter and stared at the tiny note on her fridge. "You are not stuck. You're just scared." She had written it months ago during one of her late-night spirals. Back then, it had felt like a lie. Now, it felt like a dare. She checked her phone. No messages, no missed calls. Not that she expected any. There were no best friends from college, no siblings. Her parents had died when she was 22. A car crash on a rainy night she never talked about. Since then, her life had been neatly divided into two parts, before the silence and after. That night, Ava didn't go straight to bed. Instead, she pulled out her laptop and opened the blank. Document dot at the top, she typed, "Things Darren has done." She paused, then she began to list them. Assigned her someone else's. Mistakes screamed in a meeting, then denied it. Told her to wear something less distracting. Took credit for her report. Twice suggested. She smiled more in front of clients. Scheduled. Fake deadlines to test her under pressure. Deleted her from a project without notice. Made her work over Christmas without pay. Told HR she was unstable. By the time she stopped typing, the list was 3 pages long. She saved the file under a random name. Final underscore metrics underscore Q4 underscore draft dot docx. And then she sat back shaking, not with fear, with rage and something else. 2.clarity. Friday, 3:12 p.m. The week ended like 1,000 others before it. Deadlines, passive-aggressive comments, and Ava carrying the weight of 3 people's work on her back. But inside her, a fault line had formed, and it was deepening. Monday, 7:16 a.m. Ava didn't sleep much over the weekend, but it wasn't exhaustion that dragged her into Monday. It was momentum. Something inside her had snapped, not in a way that made her break, but in a way that made her move. She wore a deep burgundy blazer she hadn't touched in over a year. It made her feel sharp, ready, like the woman she imagined she could be when no one was watching. Her reflection in the subway window didn't flinch anymore. By 9:30 a.m. She was sitting in a Zoom meeting with HR, not Jessica this time. It was someone higher up. A woman named Ellen from corporate HR, polite and calculated. With a notebook full of empty expressions. Ava had emailed her on Sunday night. Just one sentence. "I believe I'm being systematically targeted by Darren Kern, and I'd like to discuss it." That was enough. Ellen asked questions, took notes. Ava answered without trembling. She didn't bring up the 3-page list, not yet. She knew better than to lead with fire. Instead, she gave just enough to be heard. Enough to plant doubt. Ellen promised to look into it. Ava didn't believe her, but it didn't matter. She wasn't asking for a rescue. She was building a record. That afternoon, Ava forwarded 2 emails to her personal account. Harmless enough not to trigger IT, but damning enough if someone knew how to read between the lines. She began screenshotting Slack conversations, logging timestamps, saving copies of calendars and project edits. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Methodical. Like a woman writing her own version of history in real time. That night, Ava pulled up her list again. Things Darren has done. She didn't add to it. She reorganized it. Chronologically. By department. By severity. It didn't make her feel angry anymore. It made her feel focused. To stay. 4:45 p.m. IT started with a whisper. Someone from accounting. Jen, maybe, passed Ava in the hallway and gave her a look. Not pitying, not curious. Something else. Respect. Ava didn't stop walking, but she noticed. Later, in the break room, Lucas slid a file across the counter. "Project timeline you were asking about." He said. "I didn't ask you for anything," she replied, confused. He winked. "No, but you might have wanted it, hypothetically." Inside the file was a detailed breakdown of every time Darren had made last-minute changes that cost the company delays, including one instance where a missed email had resulted in a $25,000 loss. Ava looked up. "Why are you giving me this?" Lucas leaned in slightly, voice low. "You're not the only one." He walked away. That night, Ava didn't go home. She went to a co-working space across town and sat at a corner desk with her laptop. She opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "Formal complaint, Darren Kern Confidential." Then she paused, cracked her knuckles, and began to write, not emotionally, not angrily, professionally, precisely, with receipts. For every insult, she had an email. For every dismissal, a timestamp. For every lie, a contradiction. It wasn't just a story anymore. It was evidence. Wednesday, 11:02 a.m. She hit send. Document was 17 pages long. It went to HR, to legal, to the CEO's executive assistant. Ava stood up from her desk, walked calmly to the kitchen, poured herself a coffee. Her hands didn't shake this time. Thursday, 8:07 a.m. The office felt different. Not quieter, not louder, just charged. Like the air before a storm, people looked at Ava differently. Some avoided her eyes. Others nodded, with something resembling acknowledgement, the kind that said, "I know what you did, and it mattered." Darren didn't speak to her that morning. He walked past her desk without a word. No snide comments. No veiled threats, just silence. It was louder than any insult he had ever thrown. By noon, the ripple had reached the top. The CEO, who had never once acknowledged Ava's existence, suddenly appeared in the office. He didn't look at her, but he did call Darren into conference room B with legal. With HR. With the door shut. Ava didn't try to eavesdrop. She didn't need to. She opened her inbox. The subject line read, "Acknowledgement of complaint, under internal review," and below it, a short line from Ellen. "Thank you, Ava. We're taking this seriously." She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling for a moment. Not in disbelief. In release. At lunch, Lucas brought her coffee without a word. Just placed it on her desk with a quiet nod. Ava looked at the cup. Her name was spelled right on the lid. Small detail. But after years of being overlooked, it felt monumental. She sipped slowly, letting the warmth settle into her bones. That evening, as most people left for the day, Darren's office door remained closed. But the blinds were open now, and Ava saw something she'd never seen before. Darren sitting alone, head in his hands. Friday, 10:58 a.m. The time Friday rolled around, Ava was no longer the woman people whispered about. Now they watched her. She didn't seek attention. That wasn't her style. But the quiet respect in the break room, the subtle space made for her at the conference table, the way even managers now responded promptly to her emails, it all said the same thing. She was no longer invisible. In the afternoon, Hutch Art sent out a mandatory meeting notice, workplace culture and conduct, attendance required. Everyone knew what it meant. No one said it out loud. Darren didn't attend. Ava did. And when she walked into that room, rows of chairs, projector screen, the faint smell of corporate vanilla in the air, something shifted even deeper. People looked to her now, not just as a colleague, but as a signal that silence could be broken, that the rules weren't just for decoration, that maybe, just maybe, someone like her could push back and not be crushed for it. After the meeting, Ellen approached her privately. "We've concluded the internal review," she said. Ava held her breath. "He won't be returning. Officially, it's a mutual separation agreement. Unofficially, we heard you loud and clear." Ava didn't smile. "Not right away," she nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. But inside her, a war drum was going still. That evening, Ava stayed. Late one last time. Not to finish a report, not to fix Darren's mess. Just to stand by the window and watch the city breathe. She felt the hum of traffic, the flicker of office lights below, and the strange calm that comes not when something ends, but when something real begins. Monday to 8:25 a.m. 2 weeks had passed since Darren disappeared from the office. No one mentioned his name. His glass office remained empty, the nameplate removed. People walked past it a little faster now, like it might still echo. But Ava? She moved slower, straighter, calmer. She was no longer surviving. She was leading. That morning, an email went out to the entire company. Subject, new role announcement, Ava Miller content. We are pleased to announce that Ava Miller will be stepping into a newly created role as Director of Employee Advocacy and Culture. In this position, Ava will be working directly with leadership to ensure transparency, accountability, and a healthy workplace environment. Her inbox exploded with replies, congratulations, applause emojis. Even a few quiet thank dashies. Lucas sent one line. They picked the right warrior. In her first week in the new role, Ava listened more than she spoke. She scheduled one-on-one check-ins, created anonymous surveys, met with department heads behind closed doors. She didn't rush to change everything overnight. She studied them by study walls before she tore any down. But privately, Ava started a second document. This one didn't live on the company server. At the top, it simply said, the next one, because Darren wasn't the only one. He never had been, and Ava didn't come this far to stop at 1. 3 months later, 4:02 p.m., the office looked the same. Same beige walls, same flickering lights, same overwatered plants in the corner, but something had changed. The people. Laughter in meetings didn't sound forced anymore. No one flinched when someone said HR. The elevators held conversations. Now, not silence. And Ava? She sat at a large round table with 6 employees from different departments. New hires, junior staff, interns. Each one with a story. Each one with a voice they were finally using. She didn't lead the conversation. She asked questions. And then she listened. Really listened. Later that evening, she stepped into what used to be Darren's old office. It wasn't empty anymore. There were books on the shelves. Soft lighting. A small bowl of candy near the door. And behind the desk, not power, but purpose. She looked out the window. Down at the city she once felt crushed by. Now it felt smaller. Or maybe she had just grown. Her phone buzzed. A message. From Lucas. We just onboarded the new code of conduct training. HR says people are actually reading it. She smiled, not because it was over, but because it wasn't. Because she had more work to do. Ava didn't burn the system down. She rewired it from the inside, with grace, with fire, and without ever raising her voice.